The job search didn't take long, and within a week I landed a position at Davidson Marketing with a pretty decent salary and promising performance bonuses. That evening over Mom's meatloaf, I shared my good news and decided to stay. I'm Anna, 22, and I recently graduated from college with my business degree. I honestly hadn't planned on moving back in with my parents. Mom put down her fork. Anna, you know I can only work part-time at the library because of my back problems. Dad cleared his throat, and things aren't great at the plant. There have been rumors of layoffs. I've been here for about 3 months, saving up some money, and then getting my own flat. Finally, the clinking of forks against plates stopped abruptly. They had a point, sort of, and they were my parents after all, so I suppose I could stay longer. After that, I went to work, came home, paid the bills, and Mom made sure dinner was always on the table. Everything seemed manageable until last weekend, when my sister Sarah arrived with her. With the bills, Mom added subtly, "And you wouldn't have to pay rent here. It just makes more sense, doesn't it?" I stared at my half-eaten meatloaf, feeling trapped. "Sarah, darling, you look amazing. How's everything going? Tell us all about your activities." I stood in the doorway and watched as my parents fell in love with their oldest daughter and her ideal little family. My husband Mike and their children, Emma and Lucas, changed like someone flipping a switch. "Oh, my precious angels," Mum CED scooped up 4-year-old Emma while Dad swung Lucas onto his shoulders. They had never shown that level of interest in me, not even when I made the dean's list or won the leadership award at the business school. Anna was a dear, and she put on some coffee. Mom called over her shoulder, not even looking at me, as she bounced Lucas on her knee while standing in the kitchen. They hung on her every word, asking about the most mundane things, like how her garden was doing, what new words Lucas had learned, and how her book club was going. I was sitting at the same kitchen table when I was 11 years old, showing my mother my straight report card. She hardly looked at it before going back to talking to Sarah about college. One day, as I listened to my family laughing from the living room, I couldn't help but think back to how things had always been this way. Sarah, my senior, had been the star of our family show for 7 years, while I was relegated to the role of supporting cast. Those years were all about Sarah's high school accomplishments. Every dinner conversation focused on her grades, extracurricular activities, and college prep. I would sit there quietly eating my peas while Mom and Dad hung on to her every word about her AP classes and college tours. "That's nice, Anna," she said absent-mindedly, waving me away. "Sarah, honey, which universities are your top choices?" "We're so proud of you, sweetheart." Mom had said, "We'll make it work, won't we?" Robert Dad nodded solemnly. "We'll take out a student loan because our Sarah deserves the best education possible." A week after Sarah left for college, they sat me down for a different type of conversation. Anna, Dad said, in a serious tone, "We need to tighten our belts for a while." But when Sarah's college expenses and loan payments became substantial, that's when things truly changed. While my classmates received new phones every year, I kept my old flip phone until it literally broke. When I needed new clothes, we went to thrift stores, and instead of traditional Christmas presents, they sent useful things like school supplies and socks. I learned my lesson early at the age of 15, joined every club and academic competition I could find, stayed up late studying not just for good grades, but for perfect ones, and wrote essays for scholarship competitions until my hands cramped because I knew that there would be no student loans for me if paid off. Mom would say, "Sir Money, your sister needs to focus on her studies," as she wrote another check. "We can't let her feel stressed about money." To State University, and I still recall my parents' relief when I assured them that they wouldn't have to pay for my education. Meanwhile, Sarah graduated, found work in Brighton, and married Mike, her college sweetheart, in 2 years. Shortly after, she had Emma and Lucas, and my parents were ecstatic that their ideal daughter had started a wonderful family. Now, every month, they look forward to seeing me. I rarely get any alone time these days, so it was the same routine. Sarah and Mike would arrive with the kids, and before I could even say hello properly, Sarah would be organizing her weekend. "Anna, you'll watch Emma and Lucas while we go shopping," she would say, not really asking Mike. The first few times I tried to suggest that our parents watch them instead. "Oh, honey," Mom would say, rubbing her back, "you know it's hard for me to maintain with young children, and your father needs to take a break on the weekends." So here I was, spending another Saturday watching Frozen with Emma for the 100th time, while Lucas attempted to color on the walls of my bedroom. Sarah and Mike were out to lunch with friends, and our parents were wandering around the garden, occasionally stopping by to see if I needed anything. I tried to comfort myself by telling myself that they were doing me a favor. A year went by in this monthly routine of babysitting and bills, and I had almost gotten used to it. Then, one day, I was doing dishes after dinner when I heard Mom's phone ring from the kitchen. I could hear her saying, "Oh, sweetheart, don't cry." I have assumed that it was just one weekend a month, one weekend of being a free, dependable babysitter while everyone else went about their lives. Sarah's voice was so loud over the phone that I could clearly hear it. "Of course you can, Mom. Without a second's hesitation, we'll make room." My stomach dropped, and I stepped forward, clearing my throat as she told me what had happened. Sarah sobbed as she explained that Mike's company had unexpectedly gone bankrupt, meaning they couldn't afford their rent anymore and had no savings. "Could we maybe stay with you for a while? There's plenty of space for everyone, but if they're moving in, maybe now would be a good time for me to get my own flat." Mom looked at me like I was crazy, Anna. "Don't be crazy. Our dad said firmly that we stick together in difficult times." They arrived the following weekend with 3 cars full of stuff, and I spent Saturday morning. The kids needed a place to play, so I moved my belongings into what had been our storage room, the smallest bedroom in the house that was barely large enough for a twin bed and dresser. My old room, which was twice as big, was turned into the kids' nursery because Emma, now 5, and Lucas, who is 3, treated the entire house like their own playground, running up and down the hallways while Sarah watched TV at full volume or. Emma Lucas was talking loudly on the phone with her friends about how hard this transition was for her, but I would tell them to calm down when they barged into my room for the 10th time, throwing my work papers all over the place, and they were just playing. Anna Sarah would say dismissively, not even looking up from her phone, "Don't be such a grouch after work." All I wanted was to unwind in my room, maybe read a book or watch something on my laptop afterwards. Got to listen to Baby Shark on repeat through the thin walls, interrupted by the steady thump of tiny feet running back and forth and Sarah's loud laughter at whatever show she was watching downstairs. Mike spent his days ostensibly looking for a job, but I mostly saw him sitting at the kitchen table, looking worriedly at his phone. "The job market is tough right now," he would say whenever anyone. The first utility bill after Sarah's family moved and hit me like a punch to the gut, so I stood in the kitchen and listened to the chaos that had become my home while I lay in my tiny bed every night, staring at the ceiling and wondering how I'd let myself get into this situation. Every time I considered bringing up moving out again, I remembered my parents' reaction and kept quiet. Looking at my bank account and seeing that the water bill alone had increased by almost double what I usually paid, along with the electricity and heating bills, I realized that my dreams of saving for my own place were rapidly fading. That evening at dinner, I made the decision to bring it up, and I started pushing my peas around the plate because the utility bills had doubled since last month, and I couldn't continue paying all the bills on my own any longer because it's taking. I'm not complaining. I just think we need to find a fair way to deal with the fact that Mike and I have lost everything. Sarah's fork clattered against her plate, almost my entire salary. "I can't believe how selfish you are, Rose. We're going through the most difficult time of our lives, and all you care about is money." "Sarah's right, Anna." Mom jumped in. "Family helps family. That's what we do." Dad nodded. I looked down at my plate and swallowed the words, somberly, "Your sister and Mike need our support right now. This isn't the time to be counting pennies." A week later, Mike finally got a job at an insurance company, which paid less than his previous job, but at least it was something. I thought maybe things would start to get better, but I was mistaken. It's really difficult to be alone with the kids all day. Sarah began complaining almost immediately. "I never get a break because Mike leaves at 8 and doesn't return until 6. It all began with small requests, like Anna watching the kids for an hour while I run to the store or watching them while I take a shower. Before I knew it, these little favors had grown into something much bigger. When I would get home from work and see Sarah getting ready to go out, she would say, "Oh good, you're home," and grab her purse. "Mike and I are." Weekends became my personal nightmare. Sarah and Mike would casually announce their plans on Friday evening, leaving me with the kids for hours. Mom and Dad conveniently started visiting relatives more frequently, usually disappearing right after Sarah and Mike left, so there I'd be the weekend after. Emma and Lucas had already eaten their snack, but they'll need dinner in an hour, and we'll be back by 10. I would spend my Saturdays cleaning up toys, making mac and cheese, and watching endless repeats of kid-friendly films. By Sunday night, I would be exhausted, my house would be a mess, and I would still have to make dinner for everyone. One evening, After a particularly taxing weekend of childcare, I finally worked up the courage to. Sarah's head snapped up, her eyes narrowed, and I said, "Say something at dinner. I need to talk to you all." I put down my fork, saying, "I'm really tired. This situation with the childcare isn't working for me." "What do you mean it isn't working? Are you saying you don't want to spend time with your own nephews?" "Don't worry, honey, this is actually good practice for Anna. She'll need to learn how to deal with kids when she becomes a mother herself someday." Then they resumed their regular dinner conversation, with Sarah discussing her day with her parents, watching over her every word, Mike nodding along, and me sitting there, invisible, pushing food around my plate once more. Nothing changed after that conversation. If anything, Sarah and Mike seemed to take my complaint as a challenge to find even. When I got home from work, they would be waiting by the door with my car keys in hand, saying, "We're meeting friends at that new restaurant downtown." And halfway out the door, they would say, "Kids have had their snack. Thanks, Anna." Weekends became something I dreaded. I would wake up on Saturday mornings with a knot in my stomach, knowing that I would spend the next 2 days watching Paw Patrol and mediating sibling fights while Sarah and Mike lived their best lives. On Wednesday, everything changed. I was working on a marketing report at work, exhausted but trying to concentrate, when my friend Rachel came by my cubicle and asked, "Hey, want to do something fun this weekend?" I sat on the edge of my desk, and we decided to go to the Pine Ridge Ski Resort for a quick weekend getaway. We left Saturday morning and returned Sunday night, and the slopes are supposed to be perfect right now for the first time in months. Friday night, I was in my small bedroom packing my duffel bag and was actually excited about the weekend coming up for once. I had just folded my warmest sweater when Sarah came in my doorway. "What are you doing?" she asked, glancing at my partially packed bag, to which I replied, "I'm going to Pine Ridge with some friends from work." Sarah's face darkened, so I looked up in shock. "You're kidding, right?" I said, still folding my ski pants. "You can't really expect me to cancel my plans because you didn't bother to tell." She crossed her arms and said, "Mike and I are going to Aunt Linda's 60th birthday party in Millbrook this weekend. Mom and Dad are coming too. You mean to stay here with Emma and Lucas?" I couldn't help but laugh aloud at the absurdity of it all. Sarah's face flushed. "This isn't funny, Anna. You're being completely irrational." "What's irrational is expecting me to drop everything at the drop of a hat to be your personal babysitter once more." Sarah's mouth dropped open, and she then turned on her heel and stormed out of my room, Mom, Dad, and Mike. I could hear her yelling down the hallway, "You won't." When the thunder of footsteps signaled the arrival of the cavalry, I continued packing, my hand trembling a little with rage. My small room felt even smaller as Sarah, Mike, and my parents were crammed in, and my mom's face was already set in that disappointed expression I knew so well. "What's this about you going skiing?" she demanded, hands on her hips. I replied, zipping up my duffel bag, "I'm going to Pine Ridge." My mom hesitated, looking uncomfortable for the first time, and Sarah jumped in, her voice dripping with condescension. We all talked about it and decided that this would work best for everyone. I was at a resort with my friends for the weekend, but you can't, Sarah said. "We have Aunt Linda's party." "No, you have Aunt Linda's party." I corrected her, stopped what I was doing, and turned to face them all. "We go to the party and you watch the kids. It's the most sensible arrangement, and you all talked about it." I slowly repeated it without me and decided what I would do with my weekend. "It's very convenient, but you can't exactly bring small children to a sophisticated party," Sarah sniffed. "Aunt Linda specifically said no kids, so I paid for my duffel bag." "It sounds like a problem for you. They're your kids, Sarah." Mike finally frowned, which is supposed to mean exactly what it sounds like. "I have plans, I'm going skiing, and your kids are your responsibility, not mine. If you can't bring them to the party, either don't go or hire a babysitter." Sarah screamed, "What money?" Again, it's not my problem. I turned to face them all, feeling stronger than I had in months or even years. "Let me be clear, I'm going skiing." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone stared at me as if I had suddenly started speaking in tongues. "Tomorrow, I will no longer be your free, convenient babysitter. I will no longer have my weekends taken over, my plans disregarded, and my life treated as though it doesn't matter if you need childcare. Sarah, that's your responsibility as a parent." The shocked silence didn't last long because Sarah's face crumpled, and she burst into theatrical sobs, covering her face with her hands. Mike muttered something that sounded like, Mom looked like she'd been slapped, Dad seemed to be trying to disappear into the doorframe, and Mike just stood there with that same confused expression that he'd been wearing since his company went bankrupt. I stood there with my duffel bag still over my shoulder as I watched my family transform into a Greek chorus of accusations. The words, "How dare you, Mom," echoed Rose's voice. "After everything we've done for you, you're being completely irresponsible," the selfish dad chimed in, shaking his head. "Absolutely selfish." I felt like I was being ungrateful under his breath. Mom delivered what she obviously believed to be the final blow. "If you walk out that door tomorrow, don't bother coming back to this house." To everyone's surprise, I burst out laughing, not a nervous giggle, but a full, genuine laugh, and they all stared at me as if I had gone insane. It's funny, though, because I said, wiping tears from my eyes, "I've been dreaming about moving out of. I haven't had the guts to leave this house for months, but now you're giving me the ideal excuse, so thank you, Mom." Sarah screamed her fake tears, but they were lost in her anger. I took out my phone and put it on speaker to make a point. "Hey, Rachel, I'm sorry to call so late, but is that offer to crash at your place still good? Maybe not just after skiing, but maybe for a..." They watched from different doorways as I made trips up and down the stairs as if they couldn't quite believe I was actually doing it. After a few days, of course, Rachel's upbeat voice filled the room. "I have a spare room. Want to come over now?" "That would be perfect. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I spent the next 15 minutes gathering everything I could fit in my car: clothes, important documents, personal items, and clothing. When I had loaded the last box, I walked into the living room where they had all gathered. I said in a steady voice, "Oh, one more thing. Since I won't be living here anymore, I won't be paying any of the bills either. You'll need to figure out how to support yourselves." Mom's face went pale, but I repeated what I had said earlier, saying, "The utilities and groceries are not my problem anymore." I turned and left the front door, ignoring Mom's abruptly frantic calls behind me. For the first time in what seemed like forever, Rachel and I drove to Pine Ridge Resort as scheduled the following morning. The drive to Rachel's place was a blur of adrenaline and relief, and my phone kept ringing with calls and messages from Sarah, including angry texts, guilt, chirping novels from Mom Stern, disappointments from Dad, and angry texts from Sarah. I chose to ignore them all. I spent a weekend doing exactly what I wanted to do: ski, laugh, eat hot chocolate by the fire, and not. When we returned on Sunday night, I opened my laptop and began looking for apartments. Since my salary would no longer be enough to support my family, I could now afford a decent place. By Wednesday, I had located a small but bright one-bedroom apartment in a desirable part of town, only a 15-minute drive from my office. My first week in my new apartment was like learning to breathe again every day. I could make coffee and drink it while it was still hot, and I could spend my evenings reading or watching anything I wanted on Netflix. The messages kept coming in, but I didn't answer the calls, but I couldn't help but read the texts. They followed a predictable pattern: "Mom, how could you abandon your family like this? We need you, Sarah." I woke up to a blessed silence in the morning, free from screaming kids, blaring TV, and guilt-inducing sighs from my mother. After a week of this, I was sitting on my new couch when Mom's number flashed on my phone once more. This time, I chose to answer Anna, and finally, Mom's voice was heard. The children kept asking where Aunt Anna is. "Dad, your mother is very upset. You need to make this right." The messages alternated between guilt trips and anger accusations, and I read them all, but I didn't reply to any of them. My silence seemed to drive them even crazier. "Sharp, I'm shocked that you ruined our entire weekend. Aunt Linda's party was totally ruined by your self-centered actions, and Sarah and Mike were unable to attend because you wouldn't watch the kids. I told you to stop, and I was firm but quiet. I'm tired of this, Mom, tired of being treated like a servant in my own home, and tired of having to give up everything, my time, money, and life, for everyone else." There was a long pause before Mom spoke again, and her voice had changed to that wheedling tone I knew so well. "I know things haven't been perfect, but we're family and we need you. The bills this month are difficult without your help, so I'm done being the family's ATM and free babysitter while being treated like I don't matter." It felt both terrifying and liberating, like cutting anchor lines I hadn't even realized were holding me down. I hung up and immediately blocked her number, then went through my phone and blocked all of Mom, Dad, Sarah, and Mike. I also blocked them on social media. Until then, I need space to live my own life. No more guilt trips, no more being treated like a walking wallet, and no more free childcare services. Returning to my life, perhaps we can create something fresh and healthy with boundaries if we have enough time and space. Respect, or perhaps we won't in any case. finished putting my personal happiness at risk and well being to satisfy their never ending needs.